So about 3 months ago, I sat in my office at night. I wasn't really sleeping very well, and because my mind was running. And it was running because I had just read some policy documents on the Ontario Human Rights Commission website in relationship to Bill C-16, and at the same time I had heard that the University of Toronto HR and Equity Vice President had decided to make anti-unconscious bias training mandatory for her staff, which I find appalling, and still find appalling. And I would recommend that if any of you are asked or required to have your unconscious biases adjusted, that you might note to yourself that by agreeing to do so, you have agreed that you're guilty. And I wouldn't recommend that. Anyways, I was mostly trying to straighten out my thoughts on these issues, and that's usually what I do when I speak, because I have a good reputation as a speaker, and I think there's two reasons for that. And one is I don't ever speak to a group. I always speak to individuals. I'm not speaking to the group. I'm speaking to individual people. And I'm not telling you what's right, because I don't know what's right. What I'm trying to do is to formulate my thoughts more clearly. And it's helpful to do that in speech, even in front of an audience, because it's a dialogue with an audience. If you watch the individuals, then you can tell if they're following you, or mostly whether they're following you, if they can understand the line of the argumentation. And some of them will be shaking their heads, and some of them will be nodding, and some of them will be looking puzzled, in which case you have to kind of reformulate. And so, and that's how to think, and when you're speaking to people, it's okay to tell them what you know, but better to show them how you think. And that means you're going to stumble around like an idiot some of the time, because you're trying to grapple with things. And what I try to do for my students is to model the process of grappling with things, because that's what you do when you think. And Norman pointed out that you can be right, or you can try to get smarter. And to be right, then you convince people that you're right, but to try to get smarter, you find out why you're wrong. And so I decided a long time ago that one of the ways to deal with my authoritarian tendencies, let's say, was to make friends with what I don't know instead of what I do know. And that's a whole different way of looking at the world, and it's got its pain, because you're always trying to figure out more or less why you're a biased moron, and that's a very long list of you have a very long list of reasons for that, and then you have to find out why you're wrong. And as a short-term mechanism for attaining psychological stability, I wouldn't recommend it. But as a long-term process where you're trying to make things work better in the medium to long term, then it's the only way. But it's easy to sacrifice the future for the present, although it's kind of the reverse of the way you should do things. So anyway.